The idea that a person can achieve something that seems impossible has always carried a magnetic pull, drawing individuals toward challenges that exceed their perceived limits. At its core, this possibility is not just a philosophical concept or motivational slogan. It is a test of human capacity, resilience, and willingness to confront the uncomfortable truths that shape personal growth. The belief in achieving the impossible demands a raw honesty about who we are, where we stand, and what we are willing to endure. It is not a fantasy. It is a disciplined confrontation with fear, doubt, and the natural inclination to retreat when stakes rise. The central argument of this essay is that the possibility of achieving the impossible is unlocked through no extraordinary circumstances, but through ordinary individuals choosing to persist when logic, comfort, and convenience suggest otherwise. The perception of impossible often originates not from external conditions, but from internal boundaries constructed over time. These boundaries form from accumulated failures, societal expectations, and the human desire for safety. Yet history repeatedly shows that the threshold of the impossible is constantly shifting, redefined by those who refuse to accept conventional limits. This suggests that impossibility is not an objective truth. It is a temporary state, measured against one's current level of discipline, knowledge, and mental toughness. To believe in the possibility of breaking past these boundaries requires confronting the discomfort embedded in self-examination. It demands acknowledging that the greatest obstacle is rarely the size of the challenge, but the size of the fear surrounding it. By recognizing this, individuals place themselves in a position to question their perceived limitations and challenge the narratives that have governed their decisions. The pursuit of the impossible is not an impulsive act of blind faith, but a deliberate engagement with incremental progress. Often, the misconception arises that miraculous outcomes require monumental leaps, yet true transformation emerges from consistent, disciplined effort. The process mirrors the development of physical endurance. No one begins by conquering extraordinary distances. Instead, they build capacity through repeated exposure to stress and fatigue. Each step into discomfort expands the threshold of what is achievable, gradually shifting the boundary of impossible. This principle applies across intellectual, emotional, and personal domains, revealing a universal truth. The impossible becomes possible through cumulative action. The individual who embraces this structure understands that setbacks are not signs to withdraw, but opportunities to deepen resilience and refine strategy. Yet the journey toward doing the impossible requires more than determination. It requires an unfiltered acceptance that suffering is inevitable. Challenges that stretch beyond known limits impose a psychological toll, producing doubt, frustration, and moments of profound vulnerability. Many turn away at this stage, mistaking discomfort for incapacity. However, those who continue discover that suffering is not merely an obstacle, but a catalyst that sharpens focus and exposes hidden potential. Through adversity, individuals confront aspects of themselves that remain dormant during periods of ease. In this sense, suffering becomes a teacher, guiding them toward an understanding that achieving the impossible is less about talent and more about the willingness to endure what others refuse to face. Even with discipline and resilience, the pursuit of the impossible encounters counter-arguments rooted in practicality and statistical probability. Critics may argue that believing in extraordinary outcomes risks delusion or sets individuals up for disappointment. While such concerns merit consideration, they often overlook the transformative power of striving itself. The value of pursuing the impossible does not lie solely in achieving the final outcome, but in the personal evolution that occurs along the way. An individual who dares to challenge the impossible becomes more adaptable, self-aware, and mentally fortified, regardless of the final result. Moreover, many innovations, breakthroughs, and acts of exceptional performance emerged from individuals who were once dismissed as unrealistic. The line between ambition and delusion lies not in the size of the dream, but in the willingness to support that dream with sustained action and clear-eyed self-assessment. Recognizing the limitations of evidence and personal circumstance is also important in framing the pursuit of the impossible. Not every challenge can be conquered, and not every dream unfolds as envisioned. However, this reality does not diminish the significance of striving. Instead, it reinforces the value of intentional effort. When individuals engage fully in the process, they redefine their identity and expand their capability, even if outcomes vary. The pursuit itself becomes a form of victory. The first step in adopting the cycle of self-limitation extraordinary and exposes a deeper strength, recognizing how deeply internalized limitations shape human behavior. People often underestimate their capability not because they lack talent or opportunity, but because they have absorbed patterns of doubt reinforced through past failures, societal expectations, and a desire for comfort. These mental patterns form a psychological ceiling, one that feels immovable because it has been accepted rather than examined. Shifting the mindset begins with challenging the ceiling, acknowledging that internal barriers often outweigh external ones. By understanding that many limitations are learned rather than innate, individuals create space to reimagine what they are capable of achieving. This realization becomes the foundation upon which belief in extraordinary outcomes can be built. Once individuals recognize that internal constraints are malleable, the next stage of the mindset shift involves redefining adversity as a necessary element of growth, rather than a signal to retreat. Extraordinary outcomes demand extraordinary effort, but such effort is rarely glamorous. It is built on repetition, discomfort, sacrifice, and the willingness to confront one's weakest points. Most people avoid adversity precisely because it threatens their comfort and exposes their vulnerabilities. Yet this discomfort is the crucible where transformation takes place. By interpreting adversity as evidence of progress rather than evidence of inadequacy, individuals can recalibrate their relationship with difficulty. This reframing allows them to endure the challenges that accompany ambitious goals and fosters a deeper belief that extraordinary outcomes are attainable. In this sense, adversity transforms from an obstacle into a catalyst, pushing individuals beyond what they once assumed possible. A crucial component of this mindset shift is recognizing that belief in extraordinary outcomes must be supported not by wishful thinking but by disciplined, consistent action. Belief without action is merely hope, and hope alone cannot sustain an individual through the inevitable periods of struggle and doubt. Instead, consistent effort, especially in moments when motivation is absent, reinforces one's belief in their own capacity. Each repetition, each small improvement, and each moment of resilience strengthens the mental framework that supports the pursuit of ambitious goals. This process builds evidence over time, creating a feedback loop where effort fuels progress and progress reinforces belief. The mindset shift becomes sustainable because it is grounded in lived experience rather than abstract confidence. However, believing in extraordinary outcomes also requires confronting the fear of failure. Humans tend to protect themselves from disappointment by lowering expectations or avoiding high-risk goals. The fear of falling short can become so consuming that it prevents individuals from fully committing to pursuits that matter. A genuine mindset shift demands accepting that failure is not only possible but necessary. Failure provides information, exposes weaknesses, and forces adaptation. By interpreting failure as part of the process rather than a definitive endpoint, individuals free themselves from the paralysis that prevents forward motion. This acceptance of failure not only strengthens resilience, but also deepens the willingness to take risks that are essential for achieving extraordinary outcomes. Despite the powerful benefits of this mindset shift, it is important to acknowledge counterarguments that caution against unrealistic expectations. Critics might argue that believing in extraordinary outcomes encourages people to ignore practical limitations or pursue ambitions that are statistically improbable. While these concerns hold some merit, they underestimate the transformative value of striving. The objective is not blind pursuit of impossible goals, but the development of a mental framework that expands capacity, fosters resilience, and encourages intentional action. Even when outcomes fall short of initial expectations, the process often yields profound personal growth, enhanced skills, and a strengthened sense of agency. The act of striving itself becomes meaningful, irrespective of the final result. Moreover, this mindset shift requires awareness of individual circumstances, acknowledging that structural, economic, or physical barriers may shape the scope of what is achievable. Accepting the existence of such barriers does not negate the value of pursuing extraordinary outcomes. Rather, it contextualizes the pursuit. Within each person's unique range of possibility, extraordinary does not mean identical, it means exceeding one's own baseline, surpassing one's previous limitations, and striving toward goals that once felt unreachable. By framing extraordinary outcomes in personal rather than universal terms, the mindset shift becomes both realistic and empowering. Ultimately, the mindset shift required to believe in extraordinary outcomes emerges from a deliberate restructuring of how individuals view themselves, their limitations, and the challenges they face. It is a commitment to confronting discomfort, embracing disciplined effort, and redefining failure as an essential element of growth. This transformation allows individuals to break free from the constraints of past narratives and create a more expansive vision of what they can achieve. Believing in extraordinary outcomes is not a matter of fate but of choice, a choice to rewrite the mental script that governs action and possibility. When individuals adopt this mindset, they unlock the capacity to pursue goals with greater courage, resilience, and conviction, turning aspirations once deemed impossible into attainable realities. Challenging self-doubt and embracing bold ambition represent two interconnected psychological transformations that determine whether individuals remain confined within their perceived limitations or rise toward goals that once felt unreachable. The tension between fear and aspiration is a defining human experience. Most people carry dreams that extend far beyond their current circumstances, yet they also carry internal voices that insist those dreams are too large, too unrealistic, or too risky. The heart of the matter lies in how individuals respond to these conflicting forces. This essay argues that overcoming self-doubt and embracing ambitious goals is not merely a matter of confidence, but a deliberate process of reframing identity, confronting fear, and cultivating a willingness to act in the face of uncertainty. Self-doubt often originates from a lifetime of internalized messages about one's abilities and limitations. These messages arise from past failures, criticism, comparison, and societal expectations that define what is appropriate or realistic. Over time, they shape a self-concept that can become restrictive, convincing individuals that their potential has a fixed ceiling. The first step in challenging self-doubt lies in recognizing that these internal narratives are not objective truths. They are interpretations shaped by emotion, memory, and social influence. When individuals begin to question the validity of these narratives, they disrupt the automatic patterns that reinforce self-limiting beliefs. This act of questioning becomes a form of resistance, a refusal to accept fear as a definitive judgment of capability. It opens the door to a reimagined identity, one that allows room for growth and possibility. Once individuals recognize that self-doubt is not an unchangeable barrier, but a learned response, they can begin to confront it through deliberate action. Action serves as the most powerful counterweight to doubt, because it generates evidence that the mind cannot easily dismiss. When a person attempts something difficult, whether it is a physical challenge, a creative pursuit, or an academic goal, they gather lived proof that contradicts the narrative of inadequacy. These small victories accumulate over time, gradually shifting the internal dialogue from "I can't" to "maybe I can," and eventually toward "I have done it before." This progression demonstrates that self-doubt is not eliminated through positive thinking alone, but through the disciplined willingness to act despite the presence of fear. In this way, action becomes a tool for reshaping identity and restoring agency. Self-doubt often originates from a lifetime of internalized messages about one's abilities and limitations. These messages arise from past failures, criticism, comparison, and societal expectations that define what is appropriate or realistic. Over time, they shape a self-concept that can become restrictive, convincing individuals that their potential has a fixed ceiling. The first step in challenging self-doubt lies in recognizing that these internal narratives are not objective truths. They are interpretations shaped by emotion, memory, and social influence. When individuals begin to question the validity of these narratives, they disrupt the automatic patterns that reinforce self-limiting beliefs. This act of questioning becomes a form of resistance, a refusal to accept fear as a definitive judgment of capability. It opens the door to a reimagined identity, one that allows room for growth and possibility. Once individuals recognize that self-doubt is not an unchangeable barrier, but a learned response, they can begin to confront it through deliberate action. Action serves as the most powerful counterweight to doubt, because it generates evidence that the mind cannot easily dismiss. When a person attempts something difficult, whether it is a physical challenge, a creative pursuit, or an academic goal, they gather live proof that contradicts the narrative of inadequacy. These small victories accumulate over time, gradually shifting the internal dialogue from "I can't" to "maybe I can," and eventually toward "I have done it before." This progression demonstrates that self-doubt is not eliminated through positive thinking alone, but through the disciplined willingness to act despite the presence of fear. In this way, action becomes a tool for reshaping identity and restoring agency.